Myself, I'm Sherry Morin. I'm a volunteer with the Josephine County Democrats, kind of the contact for the office, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So, just a couple things. Those of you that got a little red ticket, I will draw the other half of that ticket out of this cup for you to ask the candidates a question. If you want to ask a specific candidate a question, please direct that question to the candidate. If you want to ask the whole panel a question, just kind of let them know. And they each are going to have, you guys are going to have about a minute for the individual question and about 2 minutes for, 2 minutes for an individual question and 1 minute for each of you for the whole panel. We're hoping that we're going to give you guys enough time to kind of ask some more intimate questions for them after this is all done. So when we get through these, we'll kind of keep track of the time. We want it to flow as smoothly as possible. When I call your number and when you start to answer your question, you will have 1 minute to do that. If you go over that, I will interrupt you. And I can be very obnoxious. So I just want to keep it fair. I want everybody that got a ticket to be able to answer your questions. Or ask your questions. So, for the candidates, you guys can introduce yourselves. You got about a minute. Dorothy Yetter back there will kind of keep track of the time for you guys. Okay? So, because we all have met you, most of us. And so, just a brief little introduction. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. Okay, Tim, we'll start with you.
1 minute, it's going to be brief. I'm Tim White, I live in Bend. My background is I have a degree in economics. I have an MBA with concentration in finance. I worked for Chrysler for 33 years. I retired to come out here just to run for Congress. I'm kidding about that part. So what I think we need to do to beat Mr. Walden is to expose Mr. Walden's continuing ability to lie. This is his recent newsletter that I'm sure you all got. I'd love to talk about this afterwards. I can go through most of these things and show you what he says to people and what he actually does. It's two different things. Give you an example. He said, I'm all for supporting the funding for rural schools, and then I found out he had nothing to do with the bill. And I guess, is that a done, or is that?
That's 15 seconds.
Okay, and then I found out he actually did have an amendment to the bill where he pulled money away from the rural schools and reallocated it to the police department so they could buy some capital equipment. He forgot to mention that part when he was telling you all about his funding. I can go on and on. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Hi, my name is Jamie McLeod Skinner, and I'm running to represent you in Congress. My background is I finished high school in Southern Oregon. My mom's a retired teacher. She taught in Southern and Central Oregon. And my wife's family's been ranching in Eastern Oregon for over 100 years. I have family contacts throughout the district. My professional background includes engineering, regional planning, and then also water law. I've worked on the water case in Klamath and also in local government in Southern Oregon. My vision for what we need to do in Congress is to invest in infrastructure. That's including physical infrastructure, things like housing and transportation and our renewable energy resources and internet access and net neutrality. And our social infrastructure, things like education. And I'm very proud to have been endorsed by the OEA, the teachers. Also healthcare and safety. These are the key things that will help us move forward. My website's jamieforOregon.com, and I look forward to tonight's conversation.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm Jim Crary. I live up in the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument, 20 miles east of Ashland. I'm married. I've got 4 children. 2 of my daughters teach in Medford. When I was younger, I had a year of college. I enlisted in the Army. I spent 21 months in the Army, got out of the Army at Fort Lewis, went through college and law school on the GI Bill, working, and then some loans. My thing that I am pushing the hardest is campaign finance reform. It is the thing that can change the whole system, because as long as we keep electing people that are going to represent their big dollar, special interest, corporate contributors, nothing is going to change. I am the only person that has said they will take money only from individuals. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I get elected and I go to Washington, D.C., the only people that I'm going to be representing are you, the people in Congressional District 2. I am not going to be representing any special interest corporate big dollar donors. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
My name's Mike Byrne, I'm the outsider. I grew up working on cattle ranches. I've been a stonemason for 35 years, but I just wanted to share a little story here. I was here almost a year ago, and how many of us were there? 8, 9, Brian? And Jim Crary and I, remember that? We were the only candidates. It was so simple back then. Plus, Trump was just getting started. We were only fearing what was going to happen. But it's worse. It's worse than we could ever have imagined. I was naive then. I wish I was naive now. You know, we were talking a little bit about this is exhausting. I'm here for the revolution. I'm not here to solve health care or climate change. I'm here because we need to walk out of this building smiling. We need to walk out of this building knowing that we are going to turn this thing around. This is our only chance. This is our best chance. That's why I'm still in this game. We have got to nominate somebody in 2018 that can take Greg Walden out.
Thank you, Michael.
I am Dr. Jenny Nearing, and I've been a doctor for almost 30 years. I've been here in Oregon for 20 years and in Bend for the last 6. In April of last year, when it looked like the Affordable Care Act was going to be repealed, I finally said, I've got to do something different. I can't just keep practicing medicine and wait for someone else to fix our broken healthcare system. People aren't getting the care they need. It's too expensive. It's affecting our economy. It's affecting our small businesses. It's affecting the people who are just one illness or accident away from bankruptcy. And we need to actually get the cost of medicine down. We need to make sure that everyone gets the care they need. And we need to start building healthy communities. We need to be putting that money, instead of into health care that isn't keeping people healthy, we need to be putting it into the things that do keep us healthy. We need to build our educational system to match the needs of the future. We need to look at family wage jobs, and we need to be focusing on the things that actually allow people to get healthy foods and breathe clean air and drink clean water. And that's why I'm running for Congress. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Hi, my name is Eric Burnett. I live in Hood River, Oregon, and I live about 2 blocks away from Greg Walden. I'll give you a little bit more. Thank you. A little bit about me. I'm a California Maritime Academy graduate, worked as a ship's officer for a number of years, came ashore about 10 years ago and worked in infrastructure to support largely grain export from the Columbia River. Finished up my career in May of 17. I was executive director of the Oregon Board of Maritime Pilots, so I was responsible for making sure that we had adequate and adequately trained ship pilots to get ships in and out of the Columbia. A little bit about my politics. There are 3 things I'm pushing on hard. Everybody gets health care. The rest of the world's figured this out. It's time. We need to really rebuild middle class wages. We do that by reunionizing the American workforce. Finally, thank you. Finally, we absolutely have to start making real infrastructure investments in CD2. Rural America's always shoved to the back of the line.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, drum roll. All right, first ticket, 39004 Okay.
I wrote it down. The FCC rules say,
Stand up. Thank you. Oh, there you go, Brian.
now you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the FCC rules say limit of 39% of the market to any one entity. If Sinclair gets the okay, they will have access to 72, some say 82% of the market. The situation that's happening in Brazil right now is the ex-president Lula is in prison today. And he is there because the fascists totally control the media in Brazil. Lula is the favorite to win the presidency of the 5th largest economy on the planet, but he cannot run from prison. So that's what we're in store for here. that's what's in store for us today if we don't straighten out the FCC. And please, asking you people to please enforce the current FCC rules, 39%, and force the FCC to fill their ranks so that they actually can do what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, is that for the whole panel or an individual candidate?
No, that's for anybody that wants to
Okay,
grab.
Eric, we'll start with you, and we'll just work your way down.
All right, can everybody hear me in the back there? Okay.
Yeah, let me know if you need the microphone.
Okay, no, I'm good unless somebody can hear.
Okay.
There's a real simple response to that.
You need the mic.
I need the mic. Okay. There's a pretty simple response to that. We used to have and enforce antitrust laws in this country, and it's not just about media. It is about big chunks of business commandeering so much of the market that markets fail. If you have competition, that's what we have antitrust laws for, then we don't see the sorts of things going on that are going on now. I don't know where our antitrust laws went. It's time to find them again and turn them back on.
Hear, hear.
I completely agree with what Eric said. I was down today at the Resist March down in front of the TV station, and happy to see so many people out, so many people honking and supporting this. We need to make sure that we protect our media, that we have free press, that we, I have to say that I was impressed by the fact that the TV station manager came out and really addressed the people who were protesting and saying, I agree, I don't want to be in the position of having to give this information, that these must-read news stories that aren't really news. And we talked about, what control they actually have as a local station. Can they make disclaimers when they're able to do this, and where is their power in that? But we need to make sure that our local news stations have to disclose the same way that we would expect anybody else to disclose. And we really need to be enforcing those FEC rulings, because we can see what's going to happen otherwise. We are on the verge of a state-run media or a private-run media that has the same effect, and that's not American.
Your question sounded more like a declaration, and I agree with everything that you said, and it was well stated. The only thing I could add to that, as well as my colleagues' answers, is there's really only three things wrong in Washington, D.C. Greed, greed, and greed. That's why I'm talking about a revolution. It's all tied up. We've got to turn this thing over now. Thanks for the question.
It's hard, what can I add? But I can add two things. One, I think 39% is way too high. I think it should be less than 39%. I would say 10%, because I was listening to some radio station, and they kept playing, and they were all saying the exact same thing, and it was just, I was listening, and I thought, how can this be happening? And it is happening because, unfortunately, they're allowing these consolidations, what they should not be doing. The other thing that concerns me the most is net neutrality. The internet is really the last bastion of open communication, and by getting rid of net neutrality, what they're doing is taking what used to be the interstate highway system, where everybody had the same access and everybody had the same speed limit, and turning it into a toll road, where if you want to be in the fast lane, you've got to have the big bucks. And all that's going to do is help the rich get richer, and it's going to really have an impact on entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Nothing less than our democracy is at stake on this. Facts matter. A level playing field matters. So whether it's talking about restrictions that you spoke of, whether it's talking about net neutrality, like Jim spoke of, all these things matter to make sure that we're able to have civil discourse in our country. And this is such a critical election, because we're looking at a time when we've got an administration who is not supporting and funding the institutions of government that are helping to protect our lives through safety. We're not looking at diplomacy overseas, so we're looking at getting into endless, mindless wars. But being able to make sure we have a level playing field and we keep corporations in check is critically important. Another piece on corporations, we saw this tax law recently that has been a huge giveaway to corporations and it's taxing the rest of us. And so we need to be leveling this playing field and holding these powerful organizations accountable.
It's not just TV and radio, it's the fact that 4 companies are basically carving up America for internet service providing. And if you think Mr. Walden's going to stand in front of that, he took $137,000 from them after he supported going against net neutrality. That was just part of the $2.6 million in PAC money the guy got for the 12 months of 2017. And if you think he's doing anything for us, out of that $2.6 million, $31,000 came from the state of Oregon. He is a bought and sold politician. He is responsible for the road that we're going down. We need to throw the guy out.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, next. 390019.
I guess I'm interested in the committees that you want to get on in Congress. Now that's wrong, but just name your first committee that you want to be on.
Jump into this. I would say the Agriculture Committee, because it's most critical to our rural communities.
I'd like to be on rules because they're the ones that decide which bills go where and what kind of hearing that they're going to have. That's a real powerful one.
Every year in Congress, House Resolution 676 gets reintroduced for 10 years in a row. Are you all familiar with that? That's
No.
Medicare for all. Medicare for all. You know where that gets sent? Right now it's in subcommittee. I mean, it's in the process. Do you know where it's at? Which subcommittee? Indian Affairs. Right? So, what committee do I want to be on? I want to be on the Indian Affairs Committee. And I want to get that out of committee, and I want to get a discussion. I want the really smart people in the room to start bringing this about. Did I mention that our system is broken, that greed, malice, and incompetence are the order of the day in Washington, D.C.? If I didn't mention that, let me say it again.
All right, we got it.
Thanks, Michael.
My first choice would be to replace Greg Walden in Energy and Commerce and really fix healthcare instead of just trying to take it away. But as a junior member in Congress, I would settle for Ways and Means in the Healthcare Committee.
Yeah, I'm with Jenny. It's ways and means. It's about the money, how we spend the money. If we don't control the flow of money, we don't control anything that really matters, and everything else subsumes underneath that.
Tim, did you want to?
Joe, I'll just speak really loud. How's that? Defense, because I want to take it. Yeah, this is what's going to get a Democrat tarred and feathered. I want to take defense from $800 billion back down to $400 billion, which, by the way, was what George W. Bush thought was just fine with his 2 henchmen, Cheney and Rumsfeld. If it was 400 was good enough for Cheney and Rumsfeld, it's good enough for Tim White. And I'll take that $400 billion and I will start spending it on the infrastructure we need, starting with the highway, rebuilding 97. I know for you it's not important, but for us on the other side of the Cascades, we want 97 to stop being the death trap and turn it into a 4-lane road from one end of the state to the other.
Okay. All right. Moving right along. 390043.
Hello, I'm Adam Bryan. I had a question, but I changed my mind. I'm going to ask a different question considering what's going on today in the world. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think Congress is supposed to vote on war. And I'm wondering about foreign policy and how you guys stand on your foreign policy. We got Syria, Yemen, tons of other atrocities going on. And it seems like everybody wants to go to war today. That's my question, for all of you.
The last time we declared war was December of 1941 when we declared war against Germany. We've been in Korea, we've been in Vietnam, we've been in Afghanistan, we've been in Iraq twice. You know what, I agree. I am so sick and tired of sending people off to get into these foreign entanglements. When I was in the Army, I was in right at the tail end of Vietnam. And I had a first cousin that got killed in Vietnam. And for what? Right now, we do great things with Vietnam. We have great, good relationships. We're trading. Why did we not just skip all of the fighting and the death and destruction on both sides and just get to where we are right now? So if somebody wants to declare a war, then bring it to Congress, and I agree, Congress does have that power, and Congress should exercise that power. And it shouldn't be the ability of the executive branch to get into all these foreign entanglements and stay in there forever. We've been in Afghanistan for 17 years. Good Lord. And then Trump actually said something truthful the other day. Well,
Thank you, Adam. Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, the Congress has the power, the sole power to declare war. So what I look at, it's just not, they're not withholding their oath of office. There are serious problems here. We should bring all our troops home to a hero's welcome. Just all of them. We are in, somebody correct me, I think we are in 92 countries right now. We are dropping bombs on 7 countries every day. So I was in Bend last week talking to high school students at Summit High School all day. These kids, there hasn't been a single day of their life when the United States, their own government, has not been dropping bombs. Now what happens when you drop a bomb? Collateral damage. You create an orphan, you create a widow, you create a new terrorist. I mean, this is insanity. I don't even know where to start. Did I say I was naive a year ago? Well, I know way too much now. These kids at high school...
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Got me started.
Easy now.
I'm glad you asked that question. It's definitely on the top of all of our minds after the chemical attack in Syria and the concerns that we might find that our president decides he's got a posture and make a statement and act like the bully he's been acting like. We know that when the chemical attack happened, when Obama was president, that he knew that the next big step would be going to war, and he deferred that to Congress, and they decided not to go to war. I think we need to make sure that that happens again, because we can't pretend that if we just drop a few bombs, somehow that's going to make that better. We know that didn't work before, and we really need to be focusing on really diplomacy. And it's devastating to see what has happened to the gutting of the State Department, that as North Korea has increased its nuclear arsenal, that we don't even have a South Korean ambassador, that we're supposed to be going into negotiations, that we just changed everyone who's advising the president, and we've got somebody in who thinks it's a really great idea to preemptively strike North Korea. I think we all have reasons to be very concerned about what's happening. We need to let Congress do its job.
Okay, I think there are 2 pieces to this puzzle. There's the War Powers Act and the authorization for the use of military force. I think they both need to go. I think it's really pretty doggone simple in one way. If the president needs to respond to something right now, he has 10 days, or she. That could happen, wow. 10 days. After that, you have to get a declaration of war from Congress, or you bring the folks home. If you get a declaration of war from Congress, it should automatically trigger a universal draft. Yes. Think that one through. Yes. Okay? If you were to reinstate a draft as part of a declaration of war, there are an awful lot of very wealthy people who would have to say, I'm going to send my sons, my daughters, my children, my cousins, my nieces, my nephews into war. Is it really worth it? That would end the poverty draft that we have now.
At the start of the Iraq War, I was playing golf in northern Michigan with 6 of my buddies, and I said, you know what we need to do? We need to bring back the draft. And my best friend, Scott, who had an 18-year-old son, wanted to throw me off the boat that we happened to be on. He said, you have 3 girls. I've got 1 son. How dare you say that? I said, Scott, you missed the point. We have been sending 18-year-old kids to military wars unnecessarily to get killed for a long time. It wasn't, remember Vietnam? It wasn't until we started drafting white kids from upper middle class that somebody said enough is enough. It's the same thing that's going on. And did I mention we need to cut defense by 50%? That would probably help the situation as well.
Leadership is about responsibility, and that's what Congress has not been doing in holding the president accountable. That's the first piece. The funding piece and appropriately funding our military, and thus reducing funding, I agree with. The other thing is funding the State Department. Diplomacy should always be the first step. We should also be looking at, we're not the world's policeman, and I agree with the president on that piece. He said that before. We should not be doing state building overseas. There's too many needs we have here at home. But this is something I'm familiar with in that I actually worked in Bosnia and Kosovo after the war. I worked in a former war zone and I got to see the damage. So we need to both be mindful of what we're doing, we need to be very careful, and as only a last resort involve sending our troops. We also can't be undermining and taking out folks because we'll be creating a vacuum for more war-like situations like Al-Qaeda. And ultimately, when our troops come home, we have to take care of them.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, next. 390026. Where's the orange? Oh, no, you're fine.
Thank you, and thank you all. I think you're all very impressive. I think you're all very impressive. I would like to ask a question. I already asked it earlier, but you're speaking to the choir here, and I'm concerned that the Democratic Party here is going to spend most of their time contacting Democrats to get out the vote. And I feel that a lot of work needs to be done with Republicans, because Walden won by 67%, and I think it's going to be tough. I really do. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do you propose getting Republican votes?
And just give the mic to Eric there. Work way down. Go ahead.
We're not gonna get those Republican votes, we'll get a few. What we have to do is get the non-affiliated voters, and we have to get turnout. So I'd like to challenge all my colleagues here to focus and post one event between now and the 24th to register voters. I've got an event in Hood River. My goal is to register 100 new voters. You can register at age 16, and you'll be on the books all ready to go at 18. Can I count on you, Jim? Can you? 17? Put together an event to get 100 kids registered to vote. So listen, to win in District 2, we have to be District 2. And I made a little list here. I think to win in District 2, a candidate, they'd be well served if they caught a steelhead. If they own a pickup truck. If they've ever dressed a deer. And if they've got a favorite campground, 2 at least. If they've ever taken a teenager to an AA meeting. If their kids ever spent more than an hour on a bus going to public school.
To be continued.
We have
To be
to
continued.
relate to the district.
Next.
So I agree, we need to make sure we're going after those non-affiliated voters. And those are people who aren't already committed to their Republican vote or voting a party line. And we need to, if possible, get them to register as Democrats. Not because we need them for the primary, but because if we get them to register as Democrats, they will also start to commit down the ticket to Democratic candidates. So that's a big part of what we're looking at as we go into the general election. The other part of that is that we do need to talk to Republicans.